I'm used to sitting in front. It's a little different.
It only gets better.
Perspective. Well, good afternoon, everyone. Thanks, of course, for the opportunity. I didn't mean to cut you off.
Oh, no, I just want to make sure, I believe that one of your references told me it's Takac. Is that?
That reference is correct.
Okay.
And I'll bet they didn't say that way the first time.
Well, the way I wrote it was that way, so I just, before I kept saying that, I wanted to make sure it was right. We have 20 minutes, and you have 2 minutes to give an opening and 2 minutes to close, and you may begin whenever you're ready.
Well, again, thank you for the time here today, and thank you for the pictures that I was able to get rid of the 10 leftover plain cutouts. It's kind of unnerving to have those around the house staring back at you, so that was a good opportunity, and I apologize to anybody who noticed I used kind of an expansive definition of recent picture. I'm grayer since then. In my presentation, I think that I would just say this. If you are able to look into the resume at all, if you check my background, if you ask me about it, I think I brought a very broad background to the bench. And by broad, I mean in different types of cases, different places where I worked. I was a government attorney. I was in private practice on my own. I was in private practice with, firms, maybe middle-sized firms. I wouldn't say big, huge firm yet. The Attorney General might qualify as the biggest firm in the state. So I have that depth of experience that I took to the bench. Now I'm in my 7th year, so what I would say is with that broad background, I've successfully made the transition to the bench. I think I now have a track record that you can rely on, that I've been able to make that transition because it is a little bit different. And if I could explain that, I would put it this way. We're all very similar, especially those on the committee that are attorneys. You're used to being an advocate. You're moving things forward. You're getting things done for your client. Even the non-attorneys, the extent that you're here on a committee and you're shaping the potential judges in your community, you're moving things, you're getting them done. By analogy, maybe, let me say that when the time comes, you get together. If you're the river that gets together to push a boulder down the stream because it needs to be moved, when you make the transition to judge, you kind of sacrifice that, and you have to get comfortable with that position. I don't get to come in a group and be a river and advocate and change and moving things. I have to be more like the drip on a stone that wears over time and makes it smooth. And really, that's what the judicial system, I think, is supposed to be. You afford that smoothness, that comfort, that people go to court and things operated the way they were. And I think that over time, hopefully, and I hope somebody will correct me if I'm wrong, but I think that's the presentation I've been able to do. I've maybe made the sacrifices I have to make. I don't go out there to make laws. It's not easy. It's something you have to give up, but that's not my role, and I'm comfortable with it. It's like going to the baseball game. When you go to a game, you want the game to be close. You want there to be good plays. You want there to be close plays. But when you leave the game, you want to talk about the batter and the fielder. You don't want to say umpire Brinkman made a particularly good call on a close play at first. You expect the judge to be there in the right position and make the right call, and in that way you work in anonymity, and that's what I endeavor to do. And I thought about that on the application. If I still haven't used my time. You asked about high-profile cases, and I wasn't trying to be obtuse on that, but this is how I would explain that. There are cases where, if you look at my background, I sent you a writing sample of one of the criminal cases I had. That was a gentleman, unfortunately, he was an attorney. He was charged with DUI manslaughter. His great-great-or-great-great-grandfather founded Lake County where I practiced. I had a courtroom full of people to talk about character and things like that. But what ultimately happened, and I don't think I need any congratulations for this because I think I handled that case the way the umpire does when the runner crosses first. He's either safe or he's out. And despite having had a room full of people, rumors go back and forth, and some people have commented to me, said, good, you did what you did, you didn't cave into the public outcry. I did simply what was supposed to be done on what you would call a high-profile case. I also had, if you maybe remember, there was a gentleman, young boy, actually let a little girl out of Walmart one time. He ended up in front of me for something. And what I would say is, if you didn't know I did that criminal case, and you didn't know that I had that boy that had led the girl out of Walmart, this was after for something else, then I did my job, because the last thing I think a judge wants to be is a 15-second soundbite on TV or an editorial page. I think those are some of the things that we give up. So I don't think because I'm a judge that handle those cases. That means I'm qualified unless you get an appointment. I think because I was one of the judges, and I'm sure you have many, that can handle a case like that, and then not, seek any kind of notoriety about that. I think that's what you're looking for. I think that's the smooth drip on a rock. That's what keeps the judiciary performing the functions that we're on the bench to do it. It is a little bit different. You bite your tongue sometimes. You might see something, read an editorial, and you have a personal opinion about something, but you know that in your role, you've given that up to do a function that would be measured over in time. And I'm pretty comfortable with that. I have the 7 year of having done that now, so I think I'm better at it than I was the first year, and that's something I endeavor to continue to get better at.
Judge, the application asks for an applicant's 6 most significant cases, and I know you answered that you were hesitant to rank cases or to designate them significant in that way. As far as being significant in terms of legal exposure to new or novel issues, or something complex, or something out of the ordinary, or different areas of the law, I think we'd be interested for you to provide that information.
And I appreciate that question. I'm sorry not having the foresight to have maybe anticipated that, but a significant case was, as I said, I would include, and you have a writing sample from the motion to exclude, and then ultimately it went to sentencing on that DUI manslaughter case. It was State versus Duncan, I think is what you'll have right there. That's one where it could have been convenient to about a, political pressure, public perceived pressure to give somebody a break. Behind that, the other order I have is from a civil case, and that's on a remand from a federal bankruptcy judge. And that was an issue on a lease. And the reason I put that in there, it was a little bit novel in that it was a real property case and some contract law interpretations. And I think the way I handled that gives me an insight of what I try to do. I try to decide the issues that are right in front of me and issue the restraint on that. And if you read that order, what you'll see is it got remanded back to me, but the parties had agreed this much rent was owed at a certain particular time. But then they came in and they were making the arguments, well, we want a credit for this, or not a credit for that, and it's something else. And just because it came back on remand from the bankruptcy judge, I said, look, you agreed what the arrearage was, and essentially that's the federal court's question, what is the arrearage? There's nothing in that contract that tells me when, the construction credit takes into effect. So I'm not going to tell you right now. Either you'll do that in front of the jury or the trial or something later. That was significant. I did get complimented by the attorneys. It was nice to have some understanding of property and contract law. That was. The young boy that came in from Walmart, I sent him on his way on a different case. I found him convicted of a battery in a juvenile case. But he was charged with something much more egregious than that. It might have been a sexual assault charge or something like that. And it wasn't everything that he had done prior to that. And I told him, I said, look, you're on a bus, and you two, you and this girl, that's inappropriate behavior. And that meets the definition of, you touch somebody, you didn't have their permission, you move on. Now, I got a call later on because from the attorney, and this is unusual, I don't encourage these, but, I didn't make a mountain out of a molehill on his case. I treated him like a juvenile, and supposedly that he was playing ball, in high school, maybe a senior now or graduated, with plans for college. So all I did was not get in the way. I didn't wreck his life, I didn't give him any special treatment. So, in juvenile, I've had that. I've had the criminal, the adult, I had the civil proceeding that came down from remand. I've handled termination of parental rights cases. It's hard not to say those significant. Obviously, they're a different area of the law. They're important. I've had contract cases. I've had the medical malpractice cases where I've done them. But, really, as a judge, I think the fact that I was able to sit there and officiate it, make the parties exchange discovery ahead of time. I tell them I like to try repeats. I don't like to read mystery novels. Plaintiff's going to tell defendant their case, defendant's going to tell plaintiff, and then you're going to retell it to me and the jury if we get there. And I've been able to do that on virtually every type of case we have. I'm pretty lucky. Lake County isn't as huge as when I would practice and go to date. I have a docket that has a third of the civil trials, a third of probate, and a a third of the domestic relations. So and just about anything that could come up in one of those, I've handled. I have I have a couple of unusual cases that have been pending for a long time through many judges of, when I got to the bench, I was the new guy, so I got it because the parties had managed to recuse and run through everybody else, and I think I'm almost about done with that one. But that's really it. If there's a particular area, if you want to say, have you done something like that? I mean, I'd be happy to answer. Nothing jumps out. And I did, that's the difference. I know I told you I applied ahead of time, and you may see some cases listed. And I did do that differently this time. It's because on your time on the bench, you just get cognizant of more things. And I didn't want a public record application, somebody look at that and say, my case isn't significant, somebody else's was. So I didn't try to do it to be too cute by half. I did it because that was a genuine concern, and I can live with the consequence of that.
I have a question. Looking at your dates of employment and law practice, I see that you were admitted in North Carolina in '87 and Florida in '88. But unless I'm missing something, your first job was in '95.
Oh, no.
Where did I miss something?
I'm sorry. I could maybe show you the dates on there if you want, but I'll give you the chronology.
Yeah, the chronology starts on page 5, section 21, with 595 through 797 at the Assistant Attorney General. And then it runs through there, but there was nothing from
Let me go
87 to 95.
Let me take you from school forward, and that might make more sense. I have a split time at the Attorney General's office, and that's why it's odd.
The split time I have was from 95 to 97, and then 05 to 206.
Right, in my chronology, I tended to go backwards, because in '06 is when I was elected to the bench. So I was, let me go the other direction.
Okay.
And maybe it'll make it clear. I went to law school in North Carolina, that's where I went to undergrad, that's where I went to law school. And while I was in law school, I decided that I would come home, live at home during the summers, see my family, and I clerked for a law firm in Ocala. And you'll see that that's the last item I listed, but it's on the addendum because it didn't fit on the page.
Okay.
I think it was Gene Atkins, Krell and Foreman. I started working there in '85. So I worked there in the summer of '85, which would have been my first year out, '86, and now '87 gets me out of law school. Law school graduation was May or June, forgive me. I sat and took the North Carolina bar, went to the Outer Banks with a couple of friends right after, and then drove home and walked into the law firm that let me clerk basically to thank them. They made me an offer and said, you've clerked here, we like it, we'd love you to work here. Quite frankly, they paid me more money to come to Florida to work as a clerk than my first job was going to pay me in Thomasville, North Carolina. My family was here, and so I took that job. I moved back to Ocala. Florida and North Carolina did not have comedy at that time, so, great planning on my part. I got my bonus was I get to take another bar exam.
So what I'm trying to figure out, I'm looking at.
I went right to that firm.
What happened from '88 to '95?
I practiced with that firm from '85 till '95 when I went to the Attorney General's office the first time to get trial
Okay,
experience.
that's the, I see, that's the law clerk.
Right, I started there, and I think what I put is I had progressed. I had been a law clerk, I had been
Okay.
an associate, and I eventually was a partner in the firm before I left. It was a small firm, it was Ocala, it was nice that they made
I
me
got it.
partnership.
It was just, I was confused
Sure.
in looking at the.
Sorry about that.
Yeah, I got it.
The bottom line was, I didn't feel like I had done enough trials. I knew a lot of great trial people in state attorneys, and so I went to the Attorney General's office in Tallahassee, and then it made make some more sense from there. The Attorney General took me to the governor's office for a short spell, then I went back into private practice. That got me pulled back to Ocala, because once I wasn't working for government anymore, the people that know you tend to call you, start doing work. And then around that time, I started thinking I might run again. The Attorney General had another opening, and I knew that win or lose my judicial campaign, I'd be vested under my state plan. So I took another year with the Attorney General's office and ran and got
Got
it.
it.
That's the thumbnail, sorry. It was hard to
I was
present
just
this
supposed to call
movie.
it, but I got it, thank you.
Yeah. The first job I remember doing after passing the bar, I can tell you, is I was hanging sheetrock, holding it with my head. I remember knowing exactly what a bar degree was good for. My dad, who I listed on there as my legal employment, that's, when I drove back from North Carolina bar exam, that's why I was hanging sheetrock and listening to a football game on the radio while we finished up one of his jobs.
running towards the end, but I just, if I could ask you, you know, I noticed that you have, you know, a few speeding tickets, 0306, 11, 13.
Right.
And the case that you indicated in here that there was kind of some kind of miscommunication.
Right, about
As a
going into the-
trooper. Could you just address that briefly
You
for us?
know, look, that was embarrassing. It's not pleasant to be a judge and be pulled over, given a traffic ticket, and that's ultimately what happened. And when the officer says, "What do?" You just, I should know better, I'm a circuit judge. And I'd heard different stories. When I left to get called and explain, a young gentleman who was the attorney said, "Judge, you gotta understand, we don't have any other judges pop into Wakulla County." He goes, "You were kind of a celebrity before you got here." I don't know what happened to give an impression, but what I told the committee and what I told, and there was a lay member who was right there. She goes, "Judge, I believe your story. I'm from Wakulla. It's so easy for me to believe that if you have interest, that somebody would show you." All I can tell you is when I was waiting to go in to pay and make my plea, but I didn't get cheated. I didn't know what the speed limit was. I was going over a bridge, and I was more than 20 miles over, so I had a mandatory court appearance. I was going to pay my fine, say my mea culpas. I didn't want to be treated any better or worse than anybody. I got there early, and because I was a builder, old buildings, my dad was a builder, old buildings fascinate me. I was looking around the Wakulla courthouse. They have one of the old courtrooms in there with the old wood, makes you feel like you should tell the truth. And the doors were locked, and I was peeking in the windows. And one deputy was nice enough to say, well, and I was dressed similar to this. He goes, "You a lawyer?" And I didn't want to lie to him, so I walked up to him. I said quietly, I said, "You know, if you promise not to tell anybody, actually I'm a judge. Just wait for my traffic ticket time." He goes, "Well, I'll show you the courtroom." And so he showed me the courtroom, and then the time came. I paid my fine, went in and out, went downstairs to pay the clerk. And I tried to think where I made a mistake. Maybe I told the clerk I'm sorry when I handed her the check that I was a judge. On the way out, I know I stuck my head into the room where the bailiffs were, and I said, "Thank you for not ratting me out and your courtesy," and I left. Now, I don't know if the comfort level happened before or not. Yeah, I can't cast any aspersions there. What I told that committee is, I'm a judge. Whatever the uncomfort level was that was created, you know, I'll be responsible and try to live for it. I might have been, you know, too gregarious on the way out. I can't explain it. I can tell you I didn't ask for any different treatment. And, you know, it's embarrassing. Sorry I have to explain it, but that's the God's honest truth. There's no other way to tell that story.
Thank you. That brings us to your closing.
Okay. I would just rehash. I do have, it's a breadth of experience from small private practice into the government, working for the governor's office where you really don't even do any legal work. That job kind of got boring, which is probably why I left. And then now being on the circuit bench, it is a different role. I understand I have to give up. When you see the right case, you can admire the lawyer in front of you for, you know, having the client who needs his day in court and think, boy, that would have been a nice case to have. But you do have to give that up as a judge. In my 7 years, I hope that the references I gave you would bolster what I'm telling you, that I've been able to do that. I know what that transition is. All things, you know, being equal, I know that our district here is made up of many counties. I don't know if there's been anybody from Lake County there in a while. All things are equal. I guess that might set you apart. It is a little bit geographic area. I don't think that being from Lake County makes me more qualified than anybody else. But I know in judge, like we just went over that traffic ticket thing, it's appearances. And so, you know, if you're looking to make an appearance of getting all the counties, then sure, I would like the chance for an interview with the governor so he can go through and make whatever decisions he has to make in making an ultimate appointment. But I would appreciate if the committee recognized and give me that opportunity to meet with him, then at least I'm qualified to sit. If not, and you're convinced why, then as a judge we get really few opportunities for feedback for people, and I put that on my application, then I would welcome the chance to tell me as a judge what was nerving, unnerving, or you know what you heard anything, because ultimately this job or the job that I've applied for, I'm looking to improve every day. And as a judge, you know, your jokes get funnier, is what they tell you, and you have to be very careful about talking to people, and it's hard to get that feedback, but I'm sure the committee wouldn't be feel restricted in that respect. So, you know, thank you for your time and your decision. I appreciate the time that you'll give to the application, and you know, I won't embarrass you if you send me up, I promise you that.
Thank you.
Thank
Thank
you.
you all.